Okay, so welcome to Overwatch 2 Season 2. We're about to do here a tier list for the strength of heroes for the average player. So just to be clear, this is my opinion on how strong heroes are going to be for someone who's between bronze and plat, more skewed to the gold plat side since that is where about 50+% of the player population is. So I'm not going to be talking about how good these heroes are at the pro level or in the hands of top 500 GM players. I'm making this tier list assuming that you're of about the average skill level, and I will try to provide some context on how the power level of these heroes varies based on how good you or your opponents are. So this should just be a rough guide to help you figure out who you want to pick and who you want to play in this season. But bear in mind, of course, there will be a mid-season patch and potentially more patches that changes what happens here. Okay, so I'm going to start first with my boy Ramatra, and I'm going to put him in the strong in this elo category. Now, I've already committed myself to one-tricking Ramatra for the remainder of this season, and combined with the early access and the entire day I spent yesterday playing Ramatra on launch, I can tell you that he is a very, very fun hero, but he is quite underwhelming. So at the highest elos where people know how to counter him, I don't think he's going to do too well. But I think he will succeed in the medal ranks because of the strength of his ultimate. So the thing about Ramatra is he can get kills very fast in his nemesis form because 4 punches or 3 punches in a melee will kill a 200 HP target. And when you've got your ult, people in the medal ranks, that being bronze to platinum, will not know to run away. And if they don't run away, then the timer will just keep going until they die or you die. That, combined with the fact that people in the medal ranks don't often know how to or don't try to counter certain heroes, I think you can get quite a lot of value with Ramatra because the biggest problem with him is that he A, lacks mobility, and he can be flanked very easily or countered by flying heroes despite whatever the cinematic might say about him plucking mercies out the sky. Pharahs and Echoes will wreck him, but you don't see that many Pharahs and particularly Echoes in the medal ranks, so he'll be fine there. And the other weakness is that he gets countered by stuns and CCs very easily, so if you go up against a Roadhog or a Doomfist or an Ana, for example, who can interrupt you when you're doing your power block, then Ramatra is really, really weak and really easily exploitable. But again, I don't think you're going to see too much of that in the medal ranks, so you should just be able to run my boy down mid, pop your ultimate, chase them down, punch them to death. You should have a lot of fun with this hero, so I think he's going to be very, very strong. So I think he's going to be quite strong in the medal ranks. Now, we're going to go from S tier down. So we're going to start with heroes I consider S tier. And let's talk first about Roadhog and Doomfist. So the reason I'm putting Roadhog and Doomfist in S tier is simple. Doomfist has received really sizable buffs in this Season 2 patch, and Roadhog has not received any nerfs, which keeps him in S tier. Because both these heroes are another example of what we would call pub stompers, those being heroes that are great at punishing people who either have a lot of mistakes in their game, or again don't know how to counter other heroes. So Roadhog has a one-shot on an 8-second cooldown with his hook, and it relies on people being potentially out of position, ready to be hooked, and there will be plenty of that in the medal ranks. So there's no real risk to him. You just walk around, you look for a hook. If you miss, you breathe and you run away. You come back 8 seconds later, you try again. Anytime you land it, you're getting a free kill, probably winning a fight just off of the back of that. And he still has really, really great damage. He's probably one of the best tank v tank fighters because you can spam the other tank down, or if you hook them, you can probably get a good kill on them. So Roadhog, very, very easy value, and if you keep landing hooks, you're going to keep getting kills. Doomfist is kind of similar where he does get shut down by CC, and we're going to talk later about what heroes can counter him potentially. But when people don't deal with the Doomfist, those of you who have played Overwatch 1 will know all too familiar the sound of, "There's a Doomfist in our backline, no one's killing the Doomfist in our backline." We're going to get that, but on steroids, because now he's even more survivable, he's even more tanky, he's literally a tank, and the buffs they've given him mean that he's more strong all the time. So I'm not a big fan of these two heroes being super strong, but they are going to be super strong, so watch out for them. Next on the S tier I think is Kiriko. Now Kiriko is an interesting hero because on launch she was kind of advertised as this hero for the DPS mains, but turns out the best way to play Kiriko is just a heal bot. That being to just spam heals all the time, get your Kitsune Rush, which at least in Season 1 was the strongest ultimate in the game, and then just win fights off of that. Now they have nerfed Kitsune Rush, but I still think Kiriko has potentially the best ability in the game, which is their Protection Suzu. And especially when you pair it with a good tank, they can be quite an unstoppable combo. So as Kiriko, if you just enable your tank by Suzuing them at the right time, it can be almost impossible to counter. And considering it doesn't have a huge mechanical demand to just do that, to just heal and then Suzu at the right time and then Kitsune Rush early, I think you can get a lot of value as Kiriko, even in the medal ranks, even when people aren't that coordinated, aren't that grouped up. She's the only S tier support though, and we're going to now move on to DPS, and I think there's 2 DPS that are going to be S tier in the medal ranks, and that is Reaper and Bastion. Now Reaper has always been a medal rank stomper, even in Overwatch 1. But turns out one of the most effective ways to win a game of Overwatch 2 is just to destroy and counterpick the enemy tank. And Reaper is amazing at doing that. You don't really need to bother flanking and finding duels. If you just sit with your tank and kill their tank, you're going to find easy value with Reaper because Reaper beats almost every tank in the game. And the same kind of idea goes for Bastion, and I think he is genuinely very, very slept on right now. especially since in this patch notes they gave him 2 buffs. They buffed his ultimate to be a little bit better, and they reduced the cooldown of his configuration mode, that being his little gun mode. So that tank gun mode itself lasts 6 seconds, and now the cooldown after that is 10 seconds. And in his tank mode, he doesn't need to reload, and he does crazy amounts of damage. So for 6 seconds to be able to shred tanks, again, is a very easy way to win Overwatch 2. I'm not a big fan of the game playing out that way, but that's how it is. So I think these are the heroes you're going to see succeed the most, and succeed the most easily. Because that is the key differential here in the metal ranks, again, assuming that you're not a mechanical god. I think these heroes are going to do very, very well for you. Now let's move on to the strong in this elo category, which basically means that I think this hero is very strong because of how people play in the metal ranks in that bronze to platinum area. So we'll start with the tanks. I'm putting Reinhardt and Risa in this category because people always love playing Reinhardt in the metal ranks. And he's still got that potential to just kind of charge in, get a kill, swing for a lot of damage. And I do believe his Earth Shatter is a very, very good ultimate, because as long as you time it right, you can pretty much guarantee at least 1 kill with just the shatter damage, if not the follow-up that comes when you slam them down with the stun. And the other important part is that people don't tend to play poke heroes as much in the metal ranks, so you don't get Reinhardt countered by like a lot of really good hit scan players, or Zenyatta's just spamming discords and orbs at him from a long distance. For that reason, I think Reinhardt will still be strong in this elo. And for similar reasons, I think Orisa too. I would say Orisa is the best tank v tank fighter in Overwatch. That meaning that if you look at Orisa versus any of the other tanks, she pretty much beats all of them. And again, in the metal ranks, people don't tend to play too much of the wider game. They just kind of focus on kill their tank, protect our tank. So you're not going to see too many people go on wild flanks or off angle too well. So you can definitely pick Orisa. If you don't like Doomfist and Hog, for example, you can pick Orisa and shut them down with your pick and hopefully get wins that way. Next, we'll talk about the only support in this category, which I'm going to put Moira. Again, very specifically strong in this elo. The great thing about Moira always has been that she's very, very reliable, although the way people play her may not be very reliable. You can always guarantee a lot of healing with Moira, a very reliable Coalescence which does good amount of damage and good amount of healing, and her Fade allows her to escape very, very easily. So your stats will always be good as Moira, and just for the relatively low input that it requires to get that value on Moira, again, you don't have to be a mechanical god at all. So I think for her, definitely she's strong in this elo in particular. So on to the DPS now. I've gone with Cassidy, Junkrat, Symmetra, and Torb. Now Cassidy, I would say, is currently probably the easiest hit scan to play, because while I think hit scan are actually very, very strong, so I think Ashe and Widowmaker are actually very, very strong at the highest elo. I think Cassidy is stronger in this elo because his magnetic grenade is literally free damage. It has quite a generous stick range, so you just kind of throw it out, and then all you really need to do is hit 1 shot on most targets and you'll finish them off. So I think a very forgiving kit that doesn't necessarily scale too well, but works very well in the metal ranks. Junkrat, again, I think is actually just a very strong pick in general in Overwatch 2, but spam has always been good in the metal ranks, so you can just kind of spam away. The traps come very, very quickly now, so again, you find you can trap tanks very reliably as Junkrat, and you can even kind of chain trap them one after the other. He's still got the one-shot potential combo with his concussive mine into primary fire, and just, yeah, more damage equal more good. So Junkrat's always going to be good in this elo. And for the same reason, Torb as well, his turret just literally auto does damage for you, and then you can spam away with his left click and his right click if at close range. His overload is very, very good. It allows him to duel very well, and he can even hold his own against tanks, which is very important. And his ultimate, again, people are very bad at dodging Molten Core in the metal ranks, so if you kind of spread it around point, people like fighting around point in the metal ranks. So you can pretty much guarantee a free fight win with his Molten Core. Now Symmetra has traditionally been a bit of a metal rank buster, but I actually think in this recent patch with her buffs, she's going to be even stronger. Because before that, she's often been quite situational where you only really want to pick her on certain maps. But I actually think if you spend some time playing Symmetra, you're going to find that you can do a lot with the teleporter. You can get to a lot of awkward places. And if you do the TP bomb, as it's called, where you drop 3 turrets on the ground and then you teleport with them, you can kind of catch people by surprise by doing a huge burst of damage. And again, in the middle ranks, people are not so quick to turn around, to notice the teleporter being deployed, to notice the Symmetra flanking on them. And if they do notice you, you just teleport back out, because again, they're not very good at killing the teleporter before you do that. So for that reason, I think Symmetra are very, very strong in this elo. Now we're going to move on to the powerful if you're good category, which basically means that if you're someone who's a specialist on this hero, if you really dedicate your time to this hero and you're not someone who, let's say, flexes onto multiple heroes, then you will still find a lot of value with these picks, but they're not so easy to win with as the heroes I've listed above. So we're going to start with my boy Winston, who historically has been very, very good in the metal ranks, because what you can do is you can duel characters very easily, again, without much of a mechanical demand. But the problem that he has now is that his counters are very strong. And again, if you look up at the S tier, Roadhog, Reaper, Bastion, these guys absolutely destroy Winston. And those are all heroes that are very, very strong right now. So just as a virtue of that, you might often struggle as Winston. And what I found a lot in Season 1 is that you can start off and do very well as Monkey, but inevitably they will switch over to Reaper, Bastion, and Roadhog if they haven't already, or even a Torbjorn, and then it becomes very difficult for you to find value. Zarya, I actually think people have kind of forgotten about how good she can be. Of course, her nerfs did reduce her power, but I still think that in linear maps where there's not too much high ground, if you can get a lot of energy as Zarya, you're still going to be really difficult to kill, and you will be a very high carry potential hero. So if you're good at managing your bubbles, which is the essential part, I think you'll do well as Zarya. And similar story with Sig, where I think he's quite slept on. I spent a lot of Season 1 playing Sig, and he is very powerful. You can put out crazy numbers. You can also duel very well, so if you use your Rock and your 2 primary fire hit combo, you will insta-kill 200 HP targets. So if you're someone who's a specialist on Sig, if you can land his abilities, he's going to be great. But if you can't reliably hit the Rock, if you can't reliably hit the primary fire, then you're better off picking one of the heroes in the above categories, because they will simply give you those kills with less input. Oh, and also, I forgot, I'm going to put D.Va in this category as well, because I think she's always got that flexibility. She can protect, she can attack, but most importantly, she looked good in black. So D.Va, again, a character that, particularly when you're very good at her, will get you a lot of value. But I often see a lot of metal rank D.Vas just kind of run in, use their cooldowns, and then once they've used their booster, they just get swung at by a Reinhardt or farmed by a Roadhog. So definitely got to be mindful of how you play the D.Va. Now the supports I'm going to put in the powerful if you're good category are Ana, Lucio, and Bap. Ana in particular I think is a very underwhelming hero in Overwatch 2, and as someone who loved playing Ana for a long time, I find that in an ordinary game you have to play perfectly just to make sure you get some sort of value. But the reason I'm putting her in this category now and not a lower one is because of what's S tier right now, which is Roadhog and Doomfist, and also the introduction of Ramatra. Ana is one of the most reliable counters to all 3 of those heroes, because all 3 of those heroes rely on not being interrupted in their cooldown cycle. So again, what that means is for Roadhog, it's about hooking and then breathing to run away. For Doomfist, it's about slamming in and then power blocking and then punching. And for Ramatra, again, it's about going in aggressive and then blocking if he needs to. With Ana's Sleep Dart, you can interrupt all those 3 things. And if you anti-nade any of these 3 characters as well, it can often force them to run all the way back, if not just die, if they stand and try and fight. So for that reason, I think if you're a good Ana, if you can reliably use your cooldowns, then I think you can actually get huge value with Ana. But if you just throw your cooldowns out and miss them all, you're going to get nothing done. Now Lucio is like an S tier pick when people know what to do, but people have no effing clue what to do in the metal ranks most of the time. So the power of Lucio to be able to move teams around coordinatedly is just not existent in the metal ranks unless you're stacking. And so the area where he's actually better is kind of someone who can go off on his own and duel people. Now Bap, again, I always say he has a really high APM requirement. You need to be able to manage a lot of things with Bap, but I think his kit is very strong. So the ability to burst heal and heal himself as well, Immortality, the window, these are all still abilities that do a lot of work. So if you're someone who's good with his primary fire, if you're good at alternating the healing and the shooting, then you'll still find a good amount of value with Baptiste. Now onto the DPS, and the DPS I'm putting in this category are Sojourn, Ashe, Genji, Echo, Pharah, Soldier, Widow, and Tracer. Now let's talk first about the hit scan. So Sojourn, obviously a big topic of discussion recently, and her nerfs are actually not really nerfs as much as they are just changing where the power of her kit lies, because as Overwatch devs like to do a lot, they nerfed one aspect of her kit, but then to compensate, they buffed another area. So I don't really understand why when the hero is really OP and you're nerfing them, you need to give them any sort of buffs. The whole point is to bring their power level down, but the power level of Sojourn is just shifted now, where especially if you have a Mercy pocket, you can just kind of spam quite a lot. You don't even need to hit the headshots anymore. You can just kind of spam with your primary fire, hit right click on body shots, and still get a lot of damage done. So I would put Sojourn even higher, but I don't think she's particularly strong in the middle ranks. I think she's going to be strong everywhere. And I don't think she's quite S tier just because the amount of input you need is a little bit higher than Reaper and Bastion to get value out of Sojourn. Ashe and Widowmaker, again, I think snipers, especially on certain maps like Junkertown, can just take over games when they're uncontested. And again, in the middle ranks, people often struggle to contest faraway characters because they don't know how to get to them. So if you find a good spot and you can hit your shots fairly reliably, you can farm as Ashe and Widowmaker. I do think with the lack of that one extra tank now, hit scan can just take over. Now Soldier obviously doesn't have that quite much range. What he lacks in range, he makes up for in mobility. So again, I think if you're someone who's not quite a sniper but likes moving around and flanking a lot, then Soldier will get you lots of value. The other benefit he has is that he has the healing station, so he's a lot more reliable than the other two, but just not quite as free value as Cassidy. So that's why I'm putting him in this category. Now Echo, Pharah, again, the Flyers are going to be very strong this season. If you are good at either of these characters, I think you're going to farm, because I think the strongest tanks and the tanks that get picked a lot are not very good at dealing with Flyers again. So Roadhog, Ramatra, Reinhardt, they're not going to bother you in the sky. The only way Ramatra can stop you is if you fly close, but again, if you're good, you're not going to fly close enough for his Vortex to pull you down. And yes, there's some flashy Doomfists who can pluck Flyers out the sky, but I don't think you're going to really see a lot of them in the middle ranks. So if you spend time on these heroes, I think you will farm, and I think Echo in particular is very strong right now. Genji and Tracer again, always heroes that if you spend a lot of time working on them, you will get good output. Tracer in particular has been buffed and is very strong, but you don't tend to see a lot of really good metal rank Tracers. So if you are one of those people, if you do want to spend time investing into Tracer, you will get a lot of kills. And again, Genji always gets a lot of love in these ranks because he's always a very good duelist. And if all else fails, you can always farm a couple people with your blade. People are not so good at shutting blade down in the metal ranks. Now onto the context-based category. There's no tanks in this, so we're going to go straight to the supports. I put Mercy and Zenyatta in this category. Mercy is a hero that's very hard to put in tier lists like this because I think it really varies game to game how strong Mercy is. There's a bit of controversial discussion right now about how strong she is at the highest ranks, but I think everyone agrees that Mercy's output is often based on her team. I think a good way of thinking of her is like a multiplier, right? She can only multiply what the team already has. So the team is giving you 0, it doesn't really matter what you're doing as Mercy because you can't multiply it with 0. But if you do have a good DPS player on your team who you can enable, then I think you can absolutely farm as Mercy. If not, you're going to have to end up pocketing your tank, which can be very risky. You can get caught out a lot. So I think if you have a good Sojourn or a good Pharah or a good Echo on your team, it's almost a free win, to be honest. But sometimes she'll struggle too. And Zenyatta, I think, is a similar idea where if he's left alone, if nobody bothers Zenyatta, he is crazy strong. You just do so much damage, and the Discord is just huge pressure on any target you put on, but especially tanks. But his big problem is that he gets countered a lot, and in the metal ranks, no one helps Zenyatta. So if there is a flanker that's on you all the time, or if their Doomfist is pounding your backline, then you're just gonna die all the time, and it's not gonna be fun. Now the two DPS I put in the context-based category are Sombra and Mei. Both of these characters have kind of been dumpstered a little bit going into Season 2, but I think there are situations, particularly in the metal ranks, where they're going to be very good. Sombra is going to be very good courtesy of what the enemy team is running. So when you see a lot of Doomfists, Sombra is automatically kind of a viable pick just to shut down their Doomfist. And you're also going to have a good time against characters like Ramatra, for example, because when him or Doomfist are blocking, they're kind of a free hack target, and once you hack them, you can kill them pretty quickly. Hog as well, again, remember, if you interrupt the cycles of these heroes, you can kill them for free. But on her own, Sombra's pretty weak, so if you're not actively shutting something down, then you'll struggle. And same idea for Mei, where again in the metal rank she's often been good because people don't really know how to play around a Mei wall, and they don't tend to kite or outrange a Mei either. Because her primary fire is really strong, 100 damage per second is really great, but when people know how to play, they just don't get in range of the primary fire, right? They just out damage them from afar with your Widowmakers and your Sojourns. But in the middle ranks, people like to clump up, and so for that reason, I think there might be occasions when you can wall and then just walk on people. And the spray is so easy to do, right? You can just spam it around like a little boy who hasn't been potty trained, and you'll just get free damage. But I do think she's an underwhelming hero, and I'm really sad about what they've done with Mei. Now onto the difficult category, I've put Ball and Junker Queen on here. Again, both these characters are very high skill ceiling. You really need to know a lot about these characters. With Junker Queen, you need to have good mechanics to land her shots and her knife, which are not easy to do at all. And the places where she benefits the most, which is mostly her commanding shout, which has been buffed, do the best in coordinated settings, which, again, you're not going to get in the metal ranks. But I do think she's a lot of fun, so if you want to spend your time on her, go for it. Wrecking Ball, the same. He's a very fun hero, and I think that actually in Overwatch 2, one of the strongest things you can do is just contest the objective, which Wrecking Ball is amazing at. So particularly modes like Push or King of the Hill, where if you just sit on the point, you're actually getting massive value. I actually think in those situations, Wrecking Ball is really good. But again, to get value out of him, you really have to know his rollouts, you really have to know his techniques. And that requires a lot of time investment. The same time spent on a different hero will probably get you higher results. So I put him in the difficult category. And I'm also going to put Hanzo in the difficult category, where normally I think him just spamming is free value. But again, I think there's better spam characters right now. I think Hanzo lacks a bit of survivability right now, where even though he has his wall climb and jump, you can isolate him and kill him fairly easily. And especially with how strong tanks are now, they can often one-on-one him without too much trouble. There's also a weird bug right now where Hanzo's literally broken and his fire will actually just go somewhere random every couple of shots. So I hope they fix that soon, because that definitely ramps up his difficulty quite a lot. Finally, we have the don't bother category, which is where I'm putting Brigitte. Now, I'm not saying Brigitte is a bad pick. I'm just saying that you probably don't need to bother picking her in the metal ranks because no one knows how to play around a Brig. Your other support will probably just actively run away from you. People don't stack for the rally. Your flankers won't peek you for your health packs. And I find that most metal rank Brigs have still not adjusted to the fact that her bash does not stun. So I will see them time and time again just bashing into a tank and then just die for free. So you're better off picking one of the stronger supports who can kind of heal and stabilize your team easier and maybe has utility in other ways. So that's the complete tier list. Hopefully it helps you guys, and again, this is targeted at the average player, so hopefully it helps you in your metal rank games, or even if you're just a quick play warrior. I hope it gives you some form of guidance with whatever little expertise I have to at least make your pick choices for Season 2 a little bit easier. If you'd like to discuss any of these with me, please head on down to my live stream at twitch.tv/SEB_, where I'll be streaming 5 days a week. But otherwise, I wish you guys the best of luck and hope to see you soon, either in-game or in another video. Peace out.